it is my pleasure to be able to wrap up the Mackinac Policy Conference, taking the 3 days that we've just had up here on Mackinac Island and really putting it, I guess, really in perspective. And joining me right now to do that is Sandy Baruah. He is the head of the Detroit Regional Chamber. Sandy, it's always great to see you.
Great to be here, and so glad you're here.
This has been a wonderful week. And Hank Cooney, who is the conference chair. Congratulations on a great week, Hank.
Thanks very much.
And Craig Fahle, who's the general manager and also the host of the Craig Fahle Show on WDET, to help round out the conversation. Craig, I know you've been talking to everyone this week, so it'll be nice to get your perspective as well.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really optimistic, upbeat conference this year because last year, obviously, we were deciding whether or not we're going to go towards bankruptcy. It was sort of an inevitability at that point in time, and there was a bit of a cloud over this. But now that we're getting close to an endpoint, it seems that everybody's ramping up to actually start making a real difference, especially for the city of Detroit and for the region. So it seems like people are looking at this as an opportunity, and that vibe really sort of coalesced here.
A little bit of a mood shift, but Sandy, talk about how when you put together an agenda for this conference this week, that to really bring out a lot of those conversations, how do you feel ending up the week?
I think this week has gone even better than we had hoped for, frankly. I mean, what we were really trying to do is create a real discussion around a handful of issues: STEM education, entrepreneurship, but making impact was our third pillar, and that's the one that really kind of came through this week, because if this week showed anything, it showed the value and the importance of leadership. Because when you look at the alignment that we have, you know, with the mayor and the governor and the emergency manager, with the city council and the legislature, Michigan is better aligned than it probably has ever been, and that's really impressive, and that really came through.
And so when we talk about impact, Hank, what were your impressions, or what were some of the business leaders and community leaders coming up and telling you about some of the conversations that they were able to have and to really listen to?
Well, it's to Sandy's point, the alignment, the efforts, for example, that Mayor Duggan's been doing in the city. His presentation, I thought, was just great as far as all the things he's gotten done in the very short period of time he's been there. And I think that when the business leaders see that type of action, you know, if you heard it once, you heard it a number of times, of metrics and measurement, you know, and that's what business does day in and day out, is they set goals for themselves and they follow it. That's what the governor's doing and has been doing. That's what Mayor Duggan's doing, and when the business community sees that and the public sees that, they see things getting done, you know, and you know, there's all been for years, you know, politicians, and they don't get anything done. Well, they're getting things done, and it's making a really big difference, which creates the environment that we were looking for here for the conference. So
part of those presentations, Craig, really made an impact. I know you and I had talked about when Mayor Duggan went up and he was able to say, all right, look, let's take a look and exactly go blow by blow on the things that I'm able to control and I'm able to work on. This is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to get results on.
Well, and I think what that accomplished up here was to give a lot of people confidence that they're going to address a lot of these issues that have been stubbornly problematic for decades, frankly, in Detroit. Somebody who's optimistic enough to say, you know what, we can actually fix this if we work together on it. And the thing is, the business community, remember 2 years ago when we were here, the takeaway from the conference was that the business community and the philanthropic community wasn't going to wait around for government to get its act together before they started fixing the problems. And now what we're seeing is that the governmental portion of it is finally starting to get in line behind that. There's a real possibility of some significant momentum as a result of that, but it takes a little time. Sometimes the tail wags the dog.
I want to shift the conversation a little bit to business and entrepreneurship specifically, Sandy. When we look at some of the statistics that are out, that Michigan is finally moving forward. We're ranked, what, number 6 in the country in terms of entrepreneur investment in IT. When you have these conversations and you listen to a lot of these entrepreneurs who say, you know what, I've made mistakes, I've failed, I've gotten back up again, we're able to do these things. What kind of inspiration is that for a lot of the people here at the conference?
Well, and that's one of the things that we're really trying to drive, not only at this conference, but through our work at the Detroit Regional Chamber. Failure is important. And you know, so
which is sometimes hard for people to
really
hear.
And because
no one likes to fail.
Well, let's face it. Well, especially here in Michigan, where failure has not necessarily been something that's been celebrated, and that sounds funny, but you know, if you go to a place like Austin or the Bay Area or other places where there's a really thriving entrepreneurial culture, the badge of honor, the people who are the most celebrated, are the ones who have failed, failed, then hit it big. And let's not forget, that's what made Michigan great. That's the Henry Ford story. We've kind of lost that. Now in Michigan, through the success of the auto company, if you're associated with something that failed, you're kind of running a truck division someplace in the hinterlands someplace. So we need to get back to this idea that it's okay to fail. What's not okay is not to try again.
Hank, how would you gauge the mood of business leaders doing business in the state of Michigan where we are right now?
I think it's just outstanding. I mean, you see it in any number of different ways. First of all, obviously, the governor straightened out the tax structure, so it's a much more competitive tax structure here in Michigan for business. That's going to attract businesses to come here and stay here. But secondly, you see the venture capital, the finance industry coming here. What Chase did with a $100 million investment, that kind of thing just doesn't happen. It's because they're very excited and see. I mean, the comments by Mayor Landrieu was pretty good. He goes, when you see Chase doing that, when you see Dan Gilbert putting all the investment, maybe these guys know something, right? And they do, because the city, it's just a great place to invest, and lots of opportunity. And so I think that they're very, very, very positive about it.
And something that also struck me, Craig, when you were talking to Mayor Landrieu, is that operation of business investment along with foundations and working along with government, that all has to happen in that circle together. Do you feel that we're finally reaching that point where everyone is coming to that point?
It certainly seems as if it's congealing right now. And like I said, it's hearing the legislature in the last week say, you know what, this is a problem we've got to solve. We can get behind this. The Senate is likely to concur this week, and there was certainly a lot of pressure being placed on them here on the island to get that package out. Don't mess it up. Get it out there so we can get this done. Kevin Orr reiterated this has got to get done. And you start to get a sense that, like I said, there's a feeling that it can actually be accomplished, that this is going to make a difference. It's going to be the new starting point that the whole region is going to need to reinvent itself. And not necessarily reinvent, but also, really sort of rethink the way that we present ourselves to the world. That seemed to be the message.
Sandy.
To follow up on Craig's point, I think one of the most important things that's happened in Detroit and in Michigan over the last maybe 2 or 3 years is that the discussion before was really focused on who can come help Detroit. Can the feds come in and step in? Can the state step in, or does the state owe Detroit money? That conversation, fortunately, has now gone away, and now we're really talking about what can be sustainable, what can be private sector led, what can create private sector jobs. So we're actually thinking about it as in terms of how can you invest and how can you get an actual return on that investment. And that's what's really changing, I think, the dynamic in Detroit in a very significant way.
Let's talk about return on investment before we get to what your to-do list is going to be for the next year, and I think you're going to be very busy. Let's talk a little bit about STEM education. And I love the fact that the conversation has been linked with education, with also the economy here, and that we need to invest in education. So therefore, we have this trained workforce for the jobs that are open and readily available for them right now. Talk to me about the importance and maybe some of the conversations you had, Sandy.
Yeah, so the bottom line is that we are not moving the needle nearly fast enough on improving our education system in the state of Michigan and frankly across the nation. We're so used to being, America's number one. When it comes to, the skills that are necessary for the 21st century global place, other countries are eating our lunch, and we're just now waking up to that fact. The jobs that are going to be the most demand, and the jobs are going to drive Michigan's economy. Just think of the mobility industry, think of the IT industry that Michigan is really based on, right? These are STEM jobs: science, technology, engineering, mathematics. We're not graduating nearly enough people through our high schools and through our universities in those fields. And it's not just the university trained people, it's about skilled workforce. Those people with 2-year associate's degree, we don't have nearly the supply of those that we need for these critical industries.
How important, Hank, was it to make that connection with that conversation with business leaders and educators?
Well, I think the business community has understood that for a while. There's a lot of them out there that are looking for people that they can't find. And so, but the focus on it with the education community. And, there's been that long-term discussion about, well, you have to have that 4-year degree to be successful. And there's a lot of truth to that. Around the country, those states that have the highest level of college graduates have a more thriving economy. But we can't forget about those skilled trades. We can't forget about that 2-year degree to fill those jobs, as Governor Snyder talked about, that pay $50,000 to $80,000 a year. Great jobs. And you don't have to necessarily be a college graduate to do them, but you got to have more skills than beyond a basic high school education.
Craig,
and that's what we got to work on.
Well, and Christy, though, I was really pleased to see that there's actually a panel discussion here this time as well on early childhood education, because you got to think long term about this. It's not just about training people right now for the jobs that are available. It's about making sure that the workforce 20, 30 years down the road is going to be there. And part of that is going to start in funding programs that get kids learning before they get to kindergarten. It's a big deal. It's been a discussion for a couple of years here at the conference, and the people are starting to take it seriously.
Absolutely.
The team with the best education is going to win.
And the funding is starting to go in that way. All right, so Sandy, this is the point where we say, what's on the to-do list for this year?
So Hank and I have had a chance to talk, and we brought our teams together and went with got some input from the governor, and so we have 4 items this year. First one is that we're going to really come out and hit the throttle on repealing the personal property tax. There's an election in August, and so we're going to put all our resources in the Detroit Regional Chamber to get a yes vote on the repeal of the personal property tax. We think that's important for our job creation and to protect the revenue for police and fire in localities. Second, we need to be ready as Detroit comes out of bankruptcy, which clearly we're poised to do, to market Detroit to the global business community. Let people know that it's a new day in Detroit. The time is going to be right. As the governor would say, we want to be loud and proud about what's happening in Detroit and send that message to the global community. Thirdly, we heard a very compelling presentation from Mayor Mike Duggan to support a new program that he has to put thousands of Detroit youth to work in the summer of 2015. And we're going to find ways to support the mayor on that. So I'm going to reach out to the mayor and see what we can do to support him. And then celebrate the disagreeables. So Malcolm Gladwell came and gave a terrific keynote address, and he said, focus on the disagreeables. And the disagreeables are those who are thinking differently than the rest of us and are creating these disruptive innovations, and they're not bound by conventional wisdoms. Those are the ones who are kind of changing the world. We have those disruptive innovators in Michigan. It goes back to the kind of the failure thing. Let's celebrate these failures. Let's celebrate these people who are being disruptive.
An ambitious agenda, Hank. I'm going to let you get the last word on this and going forward this year.
Well, just that we're excited about the progress we've made, and very excited about what we've accomplished here at the conference. But as I said as we walked out, discussion's great, conversation's great, but you got to have action. And this is an action item. And these are action items, and that's what we're all about, to get things done. So that's what we're going to do.
And we'll end it right there. Craig Fahle, Hank Cooney, Sandy Baruah, thanks so much for joining me. Congratulations on another conference, and hopefully we get to see you again next year.
We'll see you up on the island next year.
Thanks.
Great. And we will be right back. Stay with us.